For 8 agonizing years, Idi Amin ruled Uganda through fear, violence and terror. The economy had collapsed, corruption thrived, and dissent was crushed at gunpoint. Yet, he paraded himself as a conqueror of the British Empire, the King of Scotland and President for life. But his downfall came not from within nor from a global superpower, but from one fatal move across Uganda's southern border. His decision to invade Tanzania sparked a war that brought his reign crashing down. In this edition of History Media, we revisit the one mistake that brought Idi Amin's brutal rule to a crashing end, his silent last hours, and how he met his end in a distant land. My name is Gabriel Atidia. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive into the details. If you enjoy this episode, please let me know in the comment section and hit the like button on this video. Else, leave your thoughts in the comment section as well. Before we get to how Idi Amin's empire came crashing, let us first of all see how it was built. Idi Amin's early years are shrouded in the uncertain records of colonial Africa. Inconsistent birth dates and competing family recollections produce a range of possible years for his birth and a small village origin in a West Nile region of what was then British East Africa. While the British government records put his birth year as 1925, other accounts including his interview with Judith Harry in 1972 put his birth year as 1926. Again, a book published in 1977 by Little, Brown and Company put his birth year as 1928. Also, family traditions and Saudi authorities in Jeddah put his birth date as 30th of May 1928 and his birthplace as Koboko in Uganda's remote West Nile region, home to the Kakwa people. Until his death on August 16, 2003, his birth date remained a matter of controversy. Notwithstanding, Idi Amin was the third son of Amin Dada Nyabira Temuresu, an ethnic Kakwa, and his second wife, Aisha Tumaru Aite Elubara. Raised by his mother after his father left, Amin grew tall, athletic, and poor. Education was limited, but his physical strength made him stand out. Idi Amin boxed, wrestled, hunted, and by 1946 he joined the King's African Rifle, the KAR, a British colonial regiment. During his time with the KAR, Amin fought in Burma during World War II. Later in 1952, his brigade was deployed to Kenya to fight against the Mau Mau rebels. He was promoted to corporal the same year, then to sergeant in 1953. Idi Amin learned the harsh lessons of empire, including loyalty to command, ruthless suppression of enemies, and above all, survival. By the early 1960s, he had become one of the most senior African officers in the Ugandan army. He was charismatic but also brutal and was even accused by British commanders of excessive cruelty during operations. Historians concluded that from the very beginning, Idi Amin's rise was not about intellect or strategy. It was about sheer physical dominance, loyalty, and fear. He was a man built for force, not governance. After independence in 1962, Uganda witnessed a fragile political situation, but Idi Amin continued to rise in the army. He was promoted to captain and then in 1963 to major. In 1964, he was appointed deputy commander of the army. The following year, he became commander of the army. However, even though Prime Minister Milton Obote did not trust Idi Amin, he had no choice but to rely on him. In 1967, he was promoted to commander of all the Ugandan armed forces, including the Air Force. Shortly thereafter, in October 1970, relations between Obote and his army head had collapsed. Obote accused Amin of corruption, plotting with foreign powers, and an attempt on his life in 1969. Consequently, Obote took control of the armed forces, reducing Idi Amin's powers. But that did not save the situation. Having learned that Obote was planning to arrest him for misappropriating army funds, Idi Amin struck swiftly and decisively. On the 25th of January 1971, while Milton Obote was attending Commonwealth Summit in Singapore, Idi Amin seized power in a military coup. Troops loyal to him sealed off Entebbe International Airport and took Kampala. Soldiers also surrounded Obote's residence and blocked major roads. Radio Uganda announced that the army has taken over power to save the country. Shortly thereafter, while the people cheered, Idi Amin appeared on state television, smiling, promising democracy and promising to release political prisoners. For a brief moment, there was hope. A resident of Kampala said, "We danced in the street. We thought at least here was a leader who cared for ordinary people. We had no idea what was coming." But the promises of January soon faded. Amin declared himself president, dissolved existing parliament, and ruled by decree. The secret police, the State Research Bureau, became synonymous with death, torture, disappearances, and midnight arrests. It was alleged that the Nile River were carrying bodies downstream. Between 100,000 and 500,000 people were believed to be killed during Idi Amin's 8 years reign. Entire ethnic groups were targeted, particularly the Akoli and Langi, whom Amin suspected of loyalty to Obote. Then, on August 4, 1972, Idi Amin made a decision that changed Uganda forever. He ordered the expulsion of Uganda's Asian population, and more than 60,000 people were given 90 days to leave the country. They were shopkeepers, bankers, doctors, and were the backbone of Uganda's economy. With their forced departure, businesses collapsed, industries crumbled, and the country slid into economic ruins. For Idi Amin, power was not only violence but spectacle. He awarded himself grandiose titles such as His Excellency, President for Life, Field Marshal Alhaji Dr. Idi Amin, VC, DSO, MC, Lord of all the beasts of the earth and fishes of the sea, and conqueror of the British Empire in Africa in general and Uganda in particular. He also called himself the King of Scotland. The world laughed, but for Ugandans, there was nothing to laugh about. In 1976, Uganda once again became the stage of a global drama. Members of the Palestinian Liberation Organization hijacked a French airliner carrying hundreds of Israelis and other nationals and landed at Entebbe Airport in Uganda. Idi Amin welcomed them and provided security for the terrorists, hoping to pose as a hero of anti-imperialism. But Israeli special forces struck back in a daring raid codenamed Operation Thunderbolt and later renamed Operation Jonathan. Israeli commandos stormed the airport, freed the hostages, and humiliated Idi Amin. We have covered the full story here. You can also see the full story in the description of this video. By the late 1970s, Idi Amin's paranoia turned outward, and that became his fatal mistake. By 1978, Uganda under Idi Amin was a state built on fear, terror, and decay. The economy had collapsed after the expulsion of the Asian community in 1972. Corruption was rampant and political killings had alienated even his allies. Inside Uganda, terror ruled the street, but outside, the dictator's erratic behavior turned him into a pariah. Yet, despite these cracks, Idi Amin still projected strength. He continued to parade himself as the conqueror of the British Empire and the King of Scotland, and for many Ugandans, opposition was silenced at gunpoint. But his downfall was already in motion, and it came not from within, but from beyond Uganda's southern border. Let us give you a background of what actually happened. Since Idi Amin seized power in 1971, relations between Uganda and Tanzania had been tensed. Tanzanian President Julius Nyerere had supported Milton Obote, the man Idi Amin overthrew and allowed Ugandan exiles to camp on Tanzanian soil. Nyerere condemned Idi Amin's atrocities and provided safe haven for opposition figures, fueling Idi Amin's suspicion and anger. Small border skirmishes occurred from time to time, but in October 1978, the conflict escalated. The Ugandan army, suffering from indiscipline and Amin's purges, was restless. To distract them and to rekindle his image as a strong man, Idi Amin ordered an invasion of Tanzania. The Ugandan troops crossed the border and occupied the Kagera salient, a strip of land in northern Tanzania. Idi Amin declared that this territory was historically part of Uganda and boasted that he was annexing the area permanently. In Kampala, Amin tried to spin the invasion as a victory. He awarded himself new military titles and spoke of expanding Uganda's border. However, as it turns out, the invasion was a catastrophic miscalculation. Julius Nyerere, a patient leader known for his calm, was provoked beyond tolerance. He could not allow Uganda to seize Tanzanian territory. Within days, the Tanzanian People's Defense Force (TPDF) mobilized. Meanwhile, Tanzania also had a significant advantage. It was disciplined, better trained, and motivated. More importantly, Ugandan exiles, including Milton Obote's loyalists, joined forces with Nyerere. The war thus became not only a matter of defending Tanzanian territory, but also an opportunity to remove Idi Amin once and for all. In early 1979, Tanzanian and Ugandan exile forces launched a full-scale counter-offensive, and Ugandan troops, plagued by poor morale and Amin's erratic leadership, faltered quickly. Many soldiers deserted, while others committed atrocities against civilians, further eroding support. By March of the same year, Tanzanian forces captured Masaka and Mbarara, major towns in southern Uganda. But Idi Amin's propaganda bluster continued. However, reality was closing in. On April 11, 1979, Tanzanian troops, along with Ugandan rebels, entered Kampala, the capital of Uganda, and the city fell with surprising speed. Idi Amin fled the capital in disguise, leaving behind the trappings of power, his grand homes, his luxury cars, and the terror machinery that had sustained him for 8 years. As Tanzanian President Nyerere declared, Amin had overestimated himself and underestimated others. When he fled Uganda, Idi Amin first sought refuge in Libya, then Iraq, and finally Saudi Arabia. The Saudis offered him sanctuary, but on one condition, that he must stay out of politics. In Jeddah, Amin lived in comfort, drove luxury cars, married several wives, and raised children. For nearly 24 years, he lived quietly away from the world stage. But for many Ugandans, Idi Amin's exile was bitter. Their tormentor lived in peace, while survivors mourned unacknowledged death. Human rights groups demanded his extradition, but no nation pressed hard enough. By July 2003, the once mighty dictator was frail. His kidneys failed, his heart weakened, and was admitted to the King Faisal Specialist Hospital in Jeddah. On July 18th, he slipped into a coma. While in his near-death condition, Idi Amin received death threat by telephone, prompting the hospital management to post guards at his bedside in the intensive care units. His family stood by his bedside. His wife, Madina, pleaded with Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni to allow him to return home to die, but the plea was denied. For weeks, Idi Amin lingered on life support, and then on August 16, 2003, at about 8 a.m., Idi Amin Dada died of multiple organ failure. The same day, he was buried quietly in Jeddah's Ruwais Cemetery According to Islamic custom, there was no stage honors, no speeches, just a handful of mourners and a simple grave. For many Ugandans, his death was too easy. He escaped trial and judgment, but history remembers him as a dictator, a tyrant, a man whose appetite for power left scars on an entire nation. For the full story of the Entebbe raid or Operation Thunderbolt, click here. For other African stories, click here. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Hispel Media. And I'll see you in the next one. Thank you kindly for watching. Peace.